Okay, we did Masav Rav Kana, and that was basically a question on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said, Lo yavid in ishtinol nafshe, that a person is not allowed to take the law into his own hands. And Rav Kana quoted Ben Bagbag that says that you should not go into someone else's property without permission, because that's shalei b'shus, without permission, because he might look at you like a thief if you go in like you're sneaking in. El shvar that means go in a blatant way, in an open way. Shvar literally means break his teeth or smash his teeth. And just say that you're taking what's yours. So don't sneak in without permission. Rather, you should go tell him, notify him that you're going to go in and take what's yours. Okay. And that was his question, because here it's obvious that you're allowed to take the law into your own hand and you're allowed to just go in and do what you got to do. Now, according to Rav Yehuda, in such a case, you would have had to go to Bezdin. Rav Yehuda says, let's make a different color so that'll stick out a little bit. Rav Yehuda said before, Lo yavidinish dino lenafshe. Lo yavidinish dino lenafshe. And according to Ben Bagbag, it seems that avidinish dino lenafshe. Okay, so one of the boys in the class, Daniel, asked that the whole machlekes between Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman was only heicha de lekapseda, the lekapseda, when there's no loss. However, if there is a pseda, if there is a loss, then even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that you're allowed to take the law into your own hands. You don't have to lose your money. You're allowed to protect your own money. Now that question is actually asked by Tosfos. Tosfos doesn't ask it; he just answers it. Tosfos dibra maschel elashvar shinav, rather break his teeth, and Tosfos says deleka pseida iri. We're talking about iri means we are dealing with. Let's put that in. We are dealing. I'm sorry. Deleka pseida is there's no loss. It has to be that there's no loss. And therefore it's a question on Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says that you would not be allowed to go in on your own and take what's yours. And Ben Bagbag says that you can go in and take what's yours. You just have to notify the person that you're going in. Now, what's the reason why it's lekap seda? It says mida asli kanashlei b'shus. Ben Bagbag begins, he says, don't go in without permission because you might look like a thief. Now, if there would be a loss, then he would not put that criteria, that condition on you. You would be allowed to go in and save it, even if you will look like a thief, as if it's yours, you don't want to lose it. So it must be that there's no loss, and therefore you don't go in. There's a certain criteria how you're allowed to go in. Don't go in looking like a thief, but you're allowed to go in a blatant way, and that could only be if there is no loss, that you have that sort of restriction. Okay, and therefore we're dealing with there's no loss. Then Rav Yehuda would hold lo yavid nafshi, you're not allowed to take the law into your own hands. Ben Bagbag says you can take the law into your own hands, and Ben Bagbag is a Tana. Rav Yehuda is an Amayra, so Rav Yehuda is in a bad situation. So Amralei, this is Rav Yehuda would respond. I assume he's actually responding. And Rav Kahana is, like we said, the student of Rav. Rav Yehuda was also a student of Rav and Shmuel. But so he's actually responding to him. Actually, sometimes the Gemara says Amarlach, and that means, Rashi tells us in some places that Amarlach does not mean that he actually said it, but usually this stands for Amarlei. And when it says Amalach, it usually adds the name. Over here, it doesn't add any name. Okay, we're going to go to the next page now. Just going to pause. Okay, so Amalei, so Rav Yehuda tells back to Rav Kahana, and he says this word. He says imach, with you. Now, there's two ways of doing this word. Let's do that in Rashi. I'll tell you what this word means. The first way of doing it is bitmiya. It's a question. Bitmiya just means a question. It's an ancient way of making a question mark. I don't know the history of a question mark, but that would be a nice Google search. The history of question mark. I don't know if it was made for the English language or for other languages. But anyway, in the Gemara, whenever it wants to say put a question mark in, it doesn't use a question mark. It just, Rashi would say bitmiya. It's in question form. So what is the question here? So Rav Yehuda is now responding to Rav Yehuda is responding to Rav Kahana, and he's saying that you're not allowed to take the law into your own hands. Ben Bagbag said you are allowed. Well, he says, Imach, with you. So Rashi says, Kalaimar, that means to say, V'chi nira be'inecha she'tshuva zu hagenesi. Does it appear in your eyes? Sorry. Nira be'inecha, nira is to appear, be'inecha in your eyes. She'tshuva zu. Tshuva means an answer. But it could also mean a response, a retort, or a reply. And it's actually a question. It's a little odd to use that word. So, but let's just say response. She'tshuva zu hagenesi, that this response is appropriate, and that would be like in a question form. So imcha, this is the first way of learning. I'll write the first way on top so we don't have to use that. Imcha, that means, is this a good question to you? Imcha literally means with you. With you, this is a good question. Ben Bagbag yichidahu. Ben Bagbag is an individual. He's a single person. Upligi Rabbanan. I gotta move over. Let's see. Upligi Rabbanan oleh. And the Rabbanan argue on him. So this could be one long question. Let's do that. And then, okay, that would be the first interpretation. The second interpretation, Rashi says, is Lishnachrina. Lishnachrina means there's another version here. And it goes like this. Imcha tei tshuvazu. You keep this tshuva. Imcha means with you. Tehi tshuvazu. This response should be she'ena klum, because it's nothing. Eina klum is a phrase that means nothing, like worth nothing. It's nothing. So imcha means you can keep it with you. Why? Because Ben Bagbag yichidahu. Because Ben Bagbag is an individual. Upligi Rabbanan aleh, and the Rabbanan argue on him. So therefore, whatever the case is, however you want to read the word imcha, that's like a questionable word. But whatever the case is, Rav Yehuda's responding is that Ben Bagbag is just an individual, and the Rabbanan argue on him, and therefore I hold like the Rabbanan. Now, Sender asked that, if the Rabbanan go like Rav Yehuda, then that should be a question on Rav Nachman. In other words, according to the Rabbanan, Rabbanan would hold, I'll just put over here, loy Ovid inish dina lenafshe. So that would be the opinion of the Rabbanan. Ben Bagbag holds Ovid inish. Ovid inish. So this would fit well with the opinion of Rav Nachman, and this would be fit with Rav Yehuda. Now, if that's the case, then we now have a question on Rav Nachman. If the Rabbanan argue on Ben Bagbag, because the Rabbanan are the majority, Rav Nachman, you chose the wrong side, and if it's a machlekes tanoim, the Gemara doesn't really like anyways a machlekes tanoim to be a machlekes amiram. It asks lema ketanoi, why are you arguing about this? The tanoim argued about this. So, but Sender asked that the Gemara should have now asked in response. It should have asked a question on Rav Nachman, that the Rabbanan argue on Ben Bagbag and hold that you're not allowed to take the law into your own hands. So I think the answer to that is that this Rabbanan right here, this Rabbanan does not necessarily exist. It's a diuk that Rav Yehuda has. The Brisa before quoted Ben Bagbag. Now, I could say that it's only Ben Bagbag. Maybe there's a Rabbanan that argue. And the fact that it quoted it only from Ben Bagbag maybe is some sort of source for that. But Rav Nachman maybe would say, you're coming up with a Rabbanan, but I think Ben Bagbag was actually quoting the majority opinion. It's in an individual's name. Okay, he was saying what everyone else holds. Okay, so that resolved that. That resolves the question of why is the Rabbanan now not an argument on Rav Nachman? Okay, what are we left with? That we had a question on Rav Yehuda, who holds lo yavid inish dina lenafshe, and Rav Yehuda responded that you're not asking me a very strong question because you're only asking me from an individual, which is Ben Bagbag, and the Rabbanan argue, and I have very good support to hold lo yavid inish dina lenafshe, that a person's not allowed to take the law into his own hand. Rabbi Yana gives a second teretz, a second answer to the question of Rav Kahana on Rav Yehuda. He says, "My shvarashinov." Now, what does it? My always means what, right? What does it mean shvarashinov? What does it mean break his teeth? I'm sorry. Ben Bagbag said that you're allowed to break his teeth and take your object. What does that mean? It means bedin. It means in court, in judgment. Okay. So you're not allowed to take the law into your own hands. It's actually agreeing with Rav Yehuda that lo yavan nafshe nafshe. You break his teeth. Don't go in as a sneaking in. Rather, you should go to court. So the Gemara says, one second. That's the end of Rav Yanai's statement. But the Gemara says, ihachi. If so, it's going to have a question now. The Brisa said, ve'emar loy. You should tell him. Now, it really shouldn't say that. It really should say, ve'oimrim loy. They tell him. Not emar loy means say to him. It means it's like an imperative. Say to him. Rather, ve'oimrim loy. They say to him. Ve'oimrim would mean they, referring to the. I'm going to put it in abbreviation. Beis Dalet for Bezdin. The Bezdin say to him, Mi boile, it needs to be. Whoops. Let's take that back. Mi boile, it needs to be. Okay. That's question number one. Now, the second question is when in the Brisa it said, Shali ani noitel. Say to him, I am taking what is mine. Shali, what is mine? It's like a half a comma. Ani noitel. That's what I'm taking. Really, it should be shaloihu noitel. What is his he is taking? Why? Because it's the Bezdin talking. It's saying his. And it's being said by the Bezdin. Shaloihu noitel. This is all according to Rabbi Yanai, that's saying that shavar ashina, if you break his teeth in judgment, you break his teeth in court, it means that you're not taking the law into your own hands. Shavar ashina is just an idiom. It's an expression that means you don't give him room. You don't give him a place to be able to respond. You break his teeth. That means you take him to court so he can't say anything. If that's the case, then the Brisa that continues has two problems with it. One is it says, rather you say to him, and what do you mean you say? You don't say anything. You say to Bezdin, and Bezdin will say to him. And also when it says, I am taking what is mine, it's not you're not saying I'm taking what's mine. It's the Bezdin saying he's taking what's his. Mi boile. Again, it needs to be. Okay. And the Gemara finishes off kasha that's a very good question on Rabbi Yanai, and so these two things will be a little bit of a difficulty. If I'm not mistaken, let's see where the Rabbeinu Hananel is, because he had something to say about. That's maybe it's on the other side of this Gemara. Whoops. Rabbeinu Hananel says. Shvarashina v'armalei shaliani noitel kirav Nachman. Well, the Rabbeinu Hananel seems to say that all of these are all going according to Rav Nachman. All of the following cases, this case including the following cases, and this that Rav Yehuda gave a response, that there's a Rabbanon, or Rabbi Yana gave an answer. All of those are just dechiyas. Dechiyas means it's trying to push off the question, but it really is a solid proof to Rav Nachman, and it's a kasha. It really is a kasha on Rav Yehuda. This teretz over here, ben bagbag yichido plika rabbanala, it's not such a great teretz, and Rav Nachman would be the main opinion here, which is interesting. Rav Nachman, we know, was great in dinim amonis, and the psak over here would go according to him. Okay.